I'll try to be brief on this because it's just ridiculous. All right. So, two things I want to talk about is Nikki Haley's presidential run for the Republican nomination, right? And then we got to talk about Kari Lake and Jeff Dewitt and that big scandal that just went down. So, as far as Nikki Haley, what do I want to talk about in this subject and then tie it into the next subject is basically the complete and utter corruption of the GOP, of the Republican convention, the entire Republican apparatus, political apparatus in the United States is completely fake and fucking ridiculous, okay? Nikki Haley is not a Republican. Nikki Haley is a simple, pure warmonger. Okay, she changed her name. She's Indian because she knows that the American public doesn't particularly like voting for Indians. She knows that just about every Indian that's ever got into office has been insanely, horrifically corrupt in both the United States and especially in Europe, especially in the United Kingdom. They are fucking terrible. And she just pretends not to be Indian, except for if you say anything about her, and then you're a racist because then she's Indian, you know. And Nikki Haley's not her original name; she changed it and shit. She's been scandalized for obviously cheating on her husband with at least two different individuals. It's probably closer to five. She's a complete whore. Like many other candidates, all she wants to talk about is Israel this, wars on the other side of the fucking earth from America that. And she's just a complete scumbag. But she's managed to beat out somewhat popular candidates for second place going into all the caucuses and whatnot, right? She's beating out Ron DeSantis. Well, Ron DeSantis basically destroyed himself and humiliated himself by immediately turning his back on his base, immediately going back on his pro free speech and pro free market stuff. The first thing he did, the second that he declared for president or declared that he's running for president, he flew to Israel to sign anti-BDS legislation. You know how I feel about anti-boycott, divest, and sanction legislation, which is just, instead of just heavily frowning upon or heavily dissuading or, you know, just having internally say, hey, by the way, if you say anything bad about Israel, if you say we should stop doing business with them, if you say you want to support a boycott of Israeli goods, if you want to sanction Israel for any of the war crimes shit they do, we're just going to, you know, freeze you out of politics. No, instead, they want it to be actually a crime that you can be charged with to do this shit, which, by the way, is not legal at all under the United States Constitution. I think there's at least 14 states that have anti-BDS legislation, by the way, including a lot of states you'd think would be all free and serious about shit like this, like Texas, Arizona, Florida. Yeah, a lot of states that are supposedly all right-wing and pretty cool and based. Nope, not even the slightest. But about Nikki Haley, she's even worse than him. But how does she beating him out when Ron DeSantis actually had a lot of anti-Trumper Republican base? A lot of his politics are popular with Republicans, the good politics that he has. And he had a lot of money behind him. Or Vivek Ramaswamy, who of course was a little too based and therefore did not have a lot of money behind him, but he had a lot of popular support among Americans. And yet he polled terribly. Weird how that keeps happening, right? But so Nikki Haley is not competitive with Trump. She's getting beat by 20 points everywhere, 9 points here, 10 points there, 30 points there, right? But if you actually look at who's voting for her, it's not registered Republicans. Apparently, you know, if you in many of the states in the United States, and especially the early states in the caucuses and whatnot, go in conventions going into who gets the nomination, they'll let independents and unregistered voters come in and vote on these things. And when you actually look at the data, 90+% of her voters are not registered Republicans, meaning that she's completely astroturfed by literal fucking Democrats and liberals who would never vote for a Republican candidate in any actual election period, but they'll go into a primary and vote for what, a neocon piece of shit who is in no way populist, is in no way popular, and has nothing going for her. Nikki Haley is a complete fraud candidate. So that wants me to lead into the next topic, which is Kari Lake getting Jeff DeWitt to resign from office. Jeff Dewitt was recorded by Kari Lake in a conversation where he literally explicitly offered to bribe her to stop running for U.S. Senate. And he literally told her, "Name your price. What's it going to cost to get you to go away?" And at first, she kind of played along so that he would out himself by saying, "Well, I can be bought." And then the second he actually starts talking about buying her, she goes, "No, fuck you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to betray the American people, and you should be ashamed of yourself and shit." And he resigned in disgrace. Okay. So, yes, obviously, Kari Lake based, probably. I mean, here's another thing I want to do a brief aside about this. On YouTube, you cannot talk about the legitimacy of elections. Kari Lake's run for governor in 2022 was called by some people, certainly not me, as very suspicious. In Arizona, I will just say, is like the chief state beyond Florida, beyond Texas, beyond any libtard state, beyond New York. There is no more corrupt state government in the entire United States than Arizona. It's basically just a human trafficking, drug trafficking, criminal cartel. The state's basically run by the mob, okay, or literally foreign terrorist interests like the Mexican cartels. It's a complete fucking shit show, and despite the state kind of being considered red-ish or at least purple, right? Every Republican they get in there is a scumbag beyond most Democrats. Your Christian Cinemas, your John McCain's, horrifically bad, horrifically corrupt, super, super, super fucking just illegitimate. And a lot of people think Kari Lake should have won that race, but of course, obviously, she didn't, and that was the most fair and legal run for governor or election for governor you've ever seen. Uh, it certainly wasn't suspicious in any way. But who is Jeff Dewitt? Because his Wikipedia page is pretty damn scrubbed, and there's not a lot of information. There, it does mention that he has recently resigned, but it doesn't really say like kind of like what he was doing in the meantime. But who is Jeff Dewitt? Well, at least over the past 8 years or so, Jeff Dewitt has been tied to the Trump campaign. Jeff Dewitt was the chairman of Trump's presidential candidate run in 2016, and he was the chief operating officer, the CEO for Trump's 2020 run. He's supposedly based MAGA guy. He's on our side. Trump's our guy and all that. And here he is trying to pay off Kari Lake, who is a Donald Trump endorsed MAGA candidate, a populist Republican who mysteriously lost elections when she was polling ahead and shit, right? And here she is recording this guy trying to bribe her, and he's saying, quote, "It's not me who wants you out. It's people back east." The quote, "people back east really don't want you to run." And who would those people be, by the way? The people back east. Well, where's the GOP based out of? Basically Washington, D.C. and New York, right? The people back east would be the GOP, the complete Republican governmental apparatus doesn't want populists. And what are populists? Ooh, are they scary terrorists? Ooh, are they gun lovers or whatever? No, they're just people who actually want to stop foreign wars. They want to stop pissing away trillions on foreign aid while this country is slowly fucking shitting itself in a recession. Keep in mind that there is 5 times more money in the system because of the U.S. Treasury and especially the Federal Reserve printing money. There's 5 times more money, 5 times more trillions of dollars in the U.S. economy than there was 4 years ago. At least since 8 years ago, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And we haven't really even been the United States in a war. And keep in mind that prior to Bush being in office, it's more like 10 or 12 times as much because Bush let the money print to go burr to fund wars in 2 countries, technically more like 6 or 7, which Obama continued and spent more money on. And yet, just over COVID, which was the greatest transfer of wealth in world history, the 1% got several times richer while all of us got fucked and are continuing to get fucked. And basically, we're being bled by a bunch of vampires. And if you think those vampires are all Democrats, you are wrong. If you think those vampires are just politicians or just bankers or whatever, you are wrong. This is a coordinated conspiracy, okay? And every once in a while, you see undeniable proof, but then people think, oh, that was just this one way or just this one thing. But keep in mind, if Trump's your guy, why is he getting fucked? And why are the people fucking him and fucking people he endorses the people that were supposedly on his side? The Mike Pences, the Jeff DeWitts, okay? We got Trump appointees making bad rulings in the Supreme Court. It really looks like, what has Darren been saying for the past 2 years? That there is no political solution to our world problems, to our nation's problems, and that we're completely fucked, and that if there is a solution, it's going to have to come from a non-political function. And it's not likely to be the judiciary either. There's no check or balance against this. The system is rotted to the fucking core. You're fucked. So, think about that when you're going to the voter's office. Because guess what? What did I say last year? I say, hey, I tend to vote Republican just in the vain hope that my taxes will go down. That seems to be bullshit too. Apologies, viewers. I was wrong. I'm not right 100% of the time, just most of the time. It seems like you're pretty much fucked. That you have a uniparty that is bought and paid for by moneyed interests, by a military-industrial complex that just wants to kill billions and destroy the middle class and return the world to global serfdom. But you should still vote, by the way, because expressing any kind of suspicion of U.S. elections and their policy and their function and their results is against YouTube's terms of service. And because if I say, hey, I don't think this is suspicious, well, that's voter suppression. Well, now I'm wondering if I'm at risk of getting taken down by just expressing a lack of faith in the entire political process of the fucking U.S. Federal legislature, in its entire function, in its entire philosophy, if not policy. Saying that may produce a sort of malaise and a lack of faith in my audience that could be considered, voter suppression. Let me finish by saying, in conclusion, after thinking of all that, I have reconsidered my point of view, and I think that we have still the best government system in the world, and everybody is just completely upstanding and legitimate, and there is no crime, and there is no corruption, and there is no racketeering or fraud or extortion or any of that shit. There's no criminal activity going on in the United States government. It is the cleanest, shiniest, prettiest thing you've ever seen, and it's perfect, and it's flawless, and it is righteous, and yeah. Thanks for watching. Oh, by the way, Jeff DeWitt, I want to mention this, as I should have mentioned this earlier. Jeff DeWitt did say that if Nikki Haley, or it's not, Kari Lake, if Kari Lake were to out him for the conversation he was having with her, he literally outright says, I expect to be car bombed to death if you expose me. He said, I will just put my keys in the ignition of my car and boom, he makes like a noise. That is literally what he said. That is a quote verbatim. Holy shit. Go vote, though. Go vote. You should have complete and utter faith in the system, folks. It's totally real and not fake and gay at all.